Signature event methodology. So we realized a few years ago that when you think about doing events, you need to think about it like a process, right? You don't just do a one-up event and expect to get business from it. You need to think about a methodology or a concept and consider what's happening as a result of it and what's the next thing. So what you're seeing here is just a chart, and you're going to have the big version of this in your digital file. But the gist of what this chart is that one event should lead to the next, right? So think about it. If you're at a big conference and you meet people at that conference, should you expect to immediately start doing business with them? Or should you have the next thing to invite them to, right? That gets a little bit closer. So more of an intimate, maybe a smaller event at your office, or some sort of other educational event. And then each event drives to what's in green, right? The idea that we're all doing this because we want to get to revenue, right? But you can't expect to jump from a big event directly to revenue. You got to have a process, and you got to think about, as I'm having conversations out in the world, what am I inviting people to? Now, John, you think that way, I think, already.
Oh yeah, no, I can give you I'll give you a perfect example. I met a guy who's a fractional CFO at a concert this weekend, and he and I were just, I mean, other than like just having a good time and like just, hey, what do you do? He's a friend of a friend, and he's like, oh yeah, I do this. I work with these types of clients, and I'm like, all right, first thing, ding. I'm like, I need to just get coffee with him, sit down in an environment where we can just talk
Okay.
and see what he's doing,
Okay.
and then it
Here's
goes the
the
next
difference.
step, next step, next step, next step.
Yeah. Here's the difference. One of the things that I told Joe when I started here 16 years ago was, I do not have time, nor can I handle 15 lunches and 15 coffee dates a day,
Oh yeah.
right? It's just not, I'll, first of all, I'm not going to get fat for you. And secondly, I don't have time. I have too many other things to do. And so as much as you can group those invitations together,
Oh yeah.
the easier your life is going to be. So what I'm suggesting is have a thing that you invite them to, not an individual meeting, until you get to the point where you're now talking about business together, right? Because they need a softer landing, and especially if you're thinking about clients. If you, because you notice there's two sides to this methodology. There's a client side and there's an advisor side. Advisors can get there a little more quickly because everybody's like, hey, how do I get to business? For clients, if you meet a client, potential client out and about, to ask them to go directly to an individual meeting without giving them some education first is probably going to scare them away, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, so this is just a way to think about it. It's just a methodology and a concept that when we kind of realized what we were doing, we thought, oh, basically make sure you have the next thing to invite somebody to anywhere you go all the time.
Yep.
Right? And so make sure it's scheduled. What's your format? What are the things that are already set up that you know you can invite people to? Like we have our Thursdays Insights. We have our EPI chapter meetings. We have things that are already scheduled that no matter who I talk to or I run into, I know I can invite them to something, right?
Yeah.
So,
and if you don't have any events planned out, you can always invite them to our events.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We try to make
Just have
sure
something in mind.
we try to make sure we have events that advisors can use to invite people to as well. It works better locally,
Yes.
like our chapter meetings and stuff, but you know, we do enough virtually that you can do that too. So, and then it starts over. So once you get a client or you get an advisor, a good center of influence, now you got to steward them, right? So this big chart is the idea of, okay, what kind of things do you go through to get them? And you get an engagement, but now how do you keep them? and how do you be grateful, and how do you continue to stay in front of them, and remain relevant, because we know that they're being pursued by a million other people all the time, right? So what are you doing to make sure that you're stewarding them? So it just sort of starts over and you continue a cycle. So that's kind of what the concept behind all of this. And now I'm going to dig into a little bit more about the mechanics. So you guys have been through, and Sarah, I'm sorry you have not, but you guys have been through what one of our processes is like when it comes to wealth planning or exit planning. And this is really no different. When what we're sharing with you is all printed out, it's literally a 3-inch binder thick of how to just do a signature event and what are all of the things that need to happen and all of the steps that need to happen. So important notes about these documents. I already prefaced this just a little bit. Hang on, I got to move you guys so I can see this. So the memos and checklists that are in these files are written from our perspective. So, and SCI again does a shit ton of events. And so we're doing this from a professional event planning perspective. I'm not necessarily saying that you guys should be, doing, having that sort of service, but just keep that in mind when you read the documents. It's going to sound like that. And then these are our internal processes, and it's what we use. And so we want you to be aware of that as well. It's not written for you from your perspective. So you have to keep in mind that it's our perspective. And then you'll see some terminology. Most of it is pretty straightforward. There's one that you'll see often called ICA, Independent Collaborative Advisor. And so that just to us is what we call the advisor world. So it could be any number of different disciplines. They're all considered an ICA. They're independent of us. And then if you see something that says ICF, Independent Collaborative Firm, that just means that that we're referring to another firm and not just an independent advisor, because a lot of the education that we're doing, we truly are looking to work at more of a organizational level than just an independent advisor level when we're doing education. So think of it as like, if you think of national conferences, and there's a conference level, but then there's these huge organizations that go to these conferences. Why not build a relationship at the higher level to do education at the organizational level, and then smaller, and then get to the independent advisors? Because the independent advisors have actual clients, but if the organization is saying attend this education, then you've got a whole bunch of advisors that are coming, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have one. I know I have an individual advisor, and I ended up getting in front of the CEO of their entire firm last week. So, and the CEO's interested. He's not going to be back until the end of May, but he's like, oh, that I was kind of just talking to him a little bit about advanced planning, and he's got, I'll put it this way. I don't know if I told you this, but he basically said, he's like, I've got $100 million friend who just sold his business for $100 million, and they don't have any advisory team or anything like that.
Oh,
So
wow.
he bought in, but I mean, again, it's like, it's one thing to get the individual like account executive on his team as a referral source, but it's another thing to get their entire firm, and it's a 25-person insurance brokerage house.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right?
Mhm.
And we can do, like we had talked about before, we can do what we call a practice developer program, where we set up a 6-pack of ongoing education, right? But keep in mind, as you're having these conversations, I want you to dig into this a little bit, because you're going to get a few little nuggets about how to sort of have them asking you for it versus you asking him for it, right? Introductory meeting. So literally treat this like a client process. Have an exploratory meeting with your internal team or your collaborative partners to really talk through, okay, what's our goal, right? What's a signature event? What is the whole process? And explain to this guy, hey, we have a signature event process, or we work with an institute that has an entire signature event process and methodology. We need to take a few minutes to make sure we understand exactly how we can help you. And we want to get acquainted with each other's teams. We want to gain an understanding and a vision. And we want to make sure that there's some standard protocols that we're going to meet along the way. So explaining that there's a process helps set the tone a little differently right off the bat. There's a memo. Let me, so I'm going to show you guys where is it?
In the cloud.
I opened the digital file. Where did it-
Oh, then maybe here.
No. Where did it go?
Where did it-
I opened it.
There we go.
So, this is what your file is going to look like. You're going to have all of these documents. It's not our entire process, but it's what we thought you needed. What the heck? What is that? Sorry, computer's trying to get me to. Oh, why is it doing that?
I don't know what if you just, yeah. There we
Okay,
go.
sorry about that. So the introductory visit memo has pretty much everything in it, and it guides the entire process. All of our memos for whatever department we're talking about in our companies start out with a purpose. So what's the name of the meeting and what's the purpose of the meeting? And so as you can see for this introductory meeting about doing events, we're talking about the idea of setting expectations and introducing that other advisor or firm to the idea of using a signature event process. So let's make sure that they understand that we have a whole process to go through. Consider the business from the perspective of SCI fellows or instructors, and what other relationships are out there that we have. Now, remember, I'm talking about this from my perspective, but if you're thinking about it, what relationships do you have that might be affected either positively or negatively by developing a relationship with this particular firm? Reiterate so that they clearly understand the event process and how it's going to help. Discuss the methodology, right? And the next event expectation, so that we're not looking for just one event, we're looking for a series of events. Inspire their confidence and bond, right? Obtain input and information, and where appropriate, engage. We used to actually have a fee to do signature events for people. We've sort of changed that a little bit. At this point, we don't charge to do that. Set general timelines and goals, and schedule what we call the next initial visit, the next meeting. But we're going to go away in the meantime and do some work before we have our initial visit, just like on our wealth strategies process. All of our memos also start with who are the participants, how should you prepare, how do you make sure you're present, other hints about conducting a meeting, remaining in that quiet confidence phase, not having to prove yourself, conducting the conversation. So it literally walks through what should you say in the meeting. Today, I would like to get acquainted with your team. I want to go over our process. I want to get a better understanding, all this stuff, right? And then review the event advantages and methodology. So it walks through that. What it's designed for, to set an expectation, and then it says, here's the next steps, right? Today we're having this meeting. Next, we're going to gather and evaluate next, and then we'll have an initial visit. Then we're going to analyze, and then we're going to present the plan for the event. Now, some smaller events you can kind of condense your steps. You don't necessarily have to go through it in great detail, but I mean, sometimes we're talking about doing a huge event or a whole series of events, and it does take time to get through it and really understand. And then there's actually implementation. So this is all the planning, and then how do you implement, right? You've got to think about the event and the marketing particulars. Marketing is huge, right? When you're putting on an event, what are all the things that you consider? And so there's memos on how to conduct all of these things. How do you keep everybody updated? What should you be doing 2 to 4 weeks prior to the event? What should you be doing the week before, the day of? Think of putting on a 3-day conference with 200 people. There's a lot to do right before you move into it, right? And then confirm your understanding of the company or their practice. Make sure you know, don't just assume you know what type of firm they are and where are their revenue sources coming from. Specifically, where are their revenue sources coming from and who are their best client and how are you going to help them find their best clients? Right? That's your goal, not for you to get business, but to help them get business. Internal cross referral, incoming and outgoing opportunities. So you want to try to make sure you understand all of that. The firm's clients, the firm's management, hierarchy, all of these things. You just want to get a good understanding of who you're working with. What's their marketing message? So you can make sure you understand that. Where appropriate, define the vision and goals for the event. So if this can happen in the first meeting, it's good to talk about who is the target for this event? Who are we trying to get at this event as we're planning together? Who are the current advisors or rainmakers and who are the prospective ones? What are the vendors, the team members that are going to participate? What's the desired image? This is important, right? Are we talking about a really high-end event? Or are we talking about a family type of event, right? Is it for clients? Is it for advisors? Is it for ultra high net worth families? And is it a wine event or is it a breakfast meeting, right? Big difference. So what's the image? What type of event is the goal? Is it a social thing or is it an educational thing? Is it a branding or an image thing? What size are we going for? What's the date, times, and stuff like that? You've got to narrow all that down. Location and environment. Are we talking about doing this at a hotel or on Joe's boat, right? For us, it's very different. Everything has a process, yeah. but there's a lot of different options for location and environment. And, you know, if you bring all this stuff up with whoever you're planning with, they may not have thought about all those different things. Marketing material and method for marketing. There's so many options nowadays with social media and emails and AI and things like that. I'm not a huge fan personally of flyers, like, you know, trying to go direct and getting some prospect list and trying to get people to attend a seminar. We used to do that stuff where we did like a dinner and we'd send out an invitation and see how many people we could get to come to a seminar. Those are really cold leads and it's super hard to get people to attend. And the return on investment is pretty minimal in my opinion, but.
Yeah, especially nowadays when like we are getting so many invitations to webinars, events. So you need to think about how to stand out.
Yeah.
Right. So how you make people to decide to go to your event, because they already got so many invitations and they're just probably, it goes to their junk folder or they just delete it.
Well, especially if it's a prospect type of event, right? Like if we're talking about a warm event where it's current clients or it's you know, current relationships, then it's a little different conversation.
It is a little different, yes.
So again, it's all about perspective, right? What type of event are you planning? What are you going to do about the registration process? We have all of that built behind the scenes. So if you're looking to do events with us, it's easy for us to use our processes and our templates for that. Food, what are you doing about food and drinks? I mean, we try to make sure that everything we do has the opportunity to have some sort of wine or something. It's because, you know, and people enjoy it more. Entertainment, mostly for social events, but is it appropriate? You know, sometimes we do an event that has, it's a conference event, but on the night in between, it's a party or a gala. So what happens at that? Who all do you want there? We've also done some smaller like roundtable events where we've had like, the what do they call them? The close-up magicians, you know, like the hand magicians where they're kind of walking around. Those are super cool, and entertaining. What are the financial choices about the event? Who's paying for it? Who might sponsors be? That sort of thing. Or is there no fee at all? Charitable contributions, we like to add on this. For instance, a couple of the bigger events we do each year, we either sponsor, like at EPI, we sponsor the charitable reception, the charity give back reception, I think it's called. We are the sponsors of that, and we put it on and we choose the cause, and we organize the auction and the whole bit because it's a part of our image. So do you have an image as a firm of something that you like to do at events that cause people to go, oh, they're the charitable guys, right? They're the ones who do that. Gain agreement to engage SCI. You don't need to worry about that piece. And then set the expectation for the next meeting. So what's going to happen in the next meeting? And what are we going to do before that next meeting? Right? What's everybody's jobs? We're all supposed to go away and figure stuff out so that we're all ready for that next meeting. At that meeting, we will explain our areas of understanding regarding your signature event, including all of these things. At that meeting, we will also explain our 2 objectives for the meeting. We're going to share our first blush recommendations based on our understandings and get your feedback. And does that sound okay? And so every meeting, the idea here is, here's what we're gonna do. Let's talk. Here's what we did, and let's talk about the next meeting. Right? That's how all these memos are structured. It's not rocket science, and it's not something you guys don't already know, but it's a great reminder and it's a format to follow. Set the date and time for the next meeting, let the advisor know, and then recap. So I chose this one to really go through in detail because it kind of covers the entire thing. Now, each of the next meetings breaks down what to do for that part. So for instance, memorandum on conducting the gathering. This is not a meeting. This is actually go away and do some research, right? So what are the gathering? What's the type of information we need to be gathering, like venues and is there anything else you need to research on the firm? Do you need to go check with some of your other partners? Do you need to, decide on marketing tools and graphics and vendors and just.
And the date.
The dates, yeah, calendars.
So no one is overseas.
Yeah, making sure that no one's overseas. Right.
Yeah, and Joe is available, right?
Or whoever. So there's a lot of gathering of information, just like if you were thinking about a client and it's time to go collect data, right? On what you might do for a client. There's an evaluation. So we've created like debrief forms. So this is internal again. So we've had our first meeting, we gathered a whole bunch of information, and now this is an internal meeting to say, okay, what have we found and what are we going to talk about at our next meeting?
Yeah, this is my favorite.
This is your favorite?
Yeah, because it outlines everything you need to consider.
Yeah. What are we still missing? What do we still need to decide? What are the promises we made? Specific courses of interest, right? Like what are the things that we talked about and other concerns? So a debrief, you should be using a debrief form for every meeting you ever conduct, whether it's with clients or signature events or anything, to be able to pass it along to the next team member or department or the next step in the process. So we use debrief forms on everything, just part of creating process. And then it's conducting the actual initial visit. So that's the next meeting, and debrief form after that, go away and analyze and test. selecting venues. You guys can see there's like a whole lot of content in here on how to build the event particulars, the marketing for the event, what are all the things you need to be considering there. The what should you be doing 2 to 4 weeks prior? I'll just open this one. A pulse check, right? This is more so for a big event, but could be anything. Building the event particulars. So pull all your prior stuff so that you have it all in one place and you're looking at it. Looking at the meeting action checklist. What are all the things that you have decided up to this point? So review all of that. Update the spreadsheet, sending out exhibitor information sheets, confirming all the continuing education needs if you're doing something like that, emailing exhibitors with information, sponsors, layout of presentation materials, and collecting all the presentations, exhibitor ads if there's that, other supplies that you need to, or ordering supplies that you need to make sure that you have for, if you're putting together binders or paper or whatever, confirming responses, and inventory all your AV and those kind of needs. Now these, I realize that some of this is for a larger conference, but it's, it's good always to think through. Let me go back to my presentation. So we walked through the introductory meeting. The planning steps are what we covered. You're going to collect all the data. You're going to have then an initial visit to talk about all the data that everybody collected and confirm everything. You're going to then go away and analyze and build all of the event particulars, all of the marketing, all of the registration, behind the scenes, the venue, all of those things. So you're going to go away and actually build everything. You're going to then present the event plan, and then you're going to implement, right? So now you're making it happen. You're getting ready. You're doing campaigns, phone campaigns, mailing campaigns, websites, all of the marketing stuff that you need to be doing, and then thinking through, like that memo I just showed you, the 2 to 4 weeks prior to the event, what's important, and the timeline of the to-dos, like the day before and the day of. And then one thing people forget a lot about is the post-event debrief. You can learn a lot from a post-event debrief, right? So making sure that you have a conversation after the fact of, okay, how did it go? What do we want to do different next time?
Yeah.
And do you have a form for it?
Yeah, also you can send a feedback form to all of the attendees, because who would know better than them if they liked it or not?
You can, yeah. Or do you ask for an evaluation during the meeting with the attendees? It just kind of depends on the group, right? So that's what we had to cover today. Like I said, we're going to send you the digital files, but we know it's a lot to just send without kind of going over what's there. The key takeaways for this are: have a methodology, right? Have a method to your madness. If you're going to do events, make sure that one thing is leading to the next thing. Start with bigger, then smaller, then in person. Don't go for the gold right off the bat. And then have a process to get it done. And use our process, create your own, pick and choose from what we have here. We don't care. Do it with us. That's fine too. We're happy to help. But use a process. Don't just try to make it happen, right? Strong arm it. Questions? No questions? No?
All right.
Okay. Well, I hope it was helpful. I mean, I hope it's gives some food for thought on the approach to doing events, and thinking of this part of your practice. While it's not necessarily the client's engagement, it's how you get business, and it's super important. And I think that a lot of firms and advisors that we work with don't really give it the credit that it deserves as thinking of it as actually a department and a process getting it done. So. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Sarah,
Thank
what are
you
you gonna,
guys.
what are you gonna tell Chris?
I mean, these are all, it's all, I don't want to say what you would do for any event. But it is nice that you've got it all step by step.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very similar. Well, I mean, we've done a handful of things, but probably not to the extent you're talking about.
Probably not, but it's it is whether you're doing a handful or you're doing small or big, it's still nice to have a sort of a checklist of things to think through, you know. That's our goal.
Yes.
Just to, if we have something, we try to share it. Is the idea. Yeah. What are your words for wisdom that I missed? This is the girl that actually does it, makes it all happen, so.
The implementation is the best part. It's the hardest one, but when you have everything planned out, and it's way easier, you know, for people who actually put it on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you. Have a great
Appreciate
day.
it.
See you guys
All right.
soon.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.